Ambassador Valkyra stood at the observation window of her ship, the eternal horizon in Clear's throat. Watch the stars move slowly past. She had been traveling through space for almost 200 cycles now. Her job was simple. She studied old things, old texts, old stories, old legends that most people had forgotten. The Sirani Collective was a powerful civilization. They controlled thousands of star systems. They had technology that could destroy planets and build new ones. They had conquered many species over the centuries and brought them under their rule, but even the mighty Sithrani had their stories, their myths, their legends about things that might or might not be real, and the oldest legend of all was about the humans. Valkyra remembered the first time she had heard about them. She was young then and barely old enough to attend the academy. Her teacher, an old male with gray scales and tired eyes, had told the class about a species that existed long before the Sithrani rose to power. They called themselves humans. They came from a small blue planet in a distant corner of the galaxy. They were strange creatures. They had soft skin with no scales. They had no claws. They could not see in the dark. They could not breathe underwater. By all measures, they should have died out quickly, but they did not die out. According to the legends, they spread across the stars faster than any species before us since. They adapted to every environment. They built machines that could think. They created weapons that could crack moons in half. And most importantly, they never stopped fighting, not with each other, not with anyone else. They were emotional and unpredictable. They formed bonds of friendship that made no logical sense. They would die for strangers. They would sacrifice everything for ideas that had no physical form. Teacher had smiled when he told them the end of the story. The humans were gone. Now they had destroyed themselves in a great war. Their violence had finally caught up with them. It was a lesson, he said, a warning. Power without wisdom leads to extinction. Valkyra had believed that story for most of her life. She had studied the old texts and found references to humans in dozens of ancient civilizations. All of them said the same thing. The humans were real. The humans were dangerous. The humans were gone, but now standing at the window of her ship, she was not so sure anymore. The signal had come 3 days ago. A strange transmission from the outer rim of the galaxy, from a region that was supposed to be empty. The computers had analyzed it for hours before returning a result that made no sense. The signal contained patterns that matched old Terran communication protocols that had not been used for thousands of cycles, protocols that should not exist anymore. Valkyra had ordered her ship to investigate. The journey took 2 days at maximum speed. When they arrived, what they found made her heart stop beating for a moment. It was a station, a massive structure, floating in the darkness of space. It was built from metals that her sensors could not identify. It had shapes and angles that hurt her eyes to look at. And on its surface, carved into the hull, in letters taller than her ship, were symbols that she recognized immediately. English, the primary written language of the ancient humans, she could not read most of it. The old texts only contain fragments of human language, but she recognized enough to know what she was looking at. This was not a myth. This was not a legend. This was real. Ambassador, said her second officer, a young male named Tak. What are your orders, Valkyra? did not answer immediately. She was still staring at the station, trying to understand what she was seeing. The structure was clearly old. Its surface was covered in scars from asteroid impacts and radiation damage, but the signal it was sending was new, fresh. Someone had activated it recently. "Contact Fleet Command," she said. "Finally, tell Admiral Torvax what we have found. Request instructions." Talk nodded and moved to the communication station. Valkyra stayed at the window, watching the station rotate. Slowly in the void, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Fear, but also excitement. If humans still existed, if they had survived all these thousands of cycles, then everything the Sithrani believed about the universe was wrong. The response from Fleet Command came faster than she expected. Admiral Torvax himself appeared on the main screen, his scarred face showing a mixture of disbelief and interest. "Ambassador," he said, "I have received your report. Are you certain about what you have found?" "I am certain, Admiral. The symbols match all known records of human writing. The signal contains patterns that were used by humans before their supposed extinction. This structure is of human origin. I would bet my life on it." Tvax was silent for a moment. He was an old warrior, a veteran of dozens of campaigns. He had fought against rebels and aliens and pirates, but he had never faced anything like this. "The Council will need to be informed," he said. "Finally, this could change everything. If humans still exist, we need to establish contact. We need to understand their intentions." "I agree, Admiral, but I recommend caution. The legends describe humans as unpredictable and dangerous. We should approach carefully." Torvax nodded. "I will assemble a diplomatic fleet, 12 ships, enough to show strength, but not so many that it appears threatening. You will lead the contact team, Ambassador. You know more about humans than anyone else in the collective." "Understood, Admiral. I will prepare for the mission." The screen went dark. Valkyra turned back to the window and looked at the station again. Somewhere inside that ancient structure, or perhaps somewhere nearby, there might be humans, real humans, living, breathing descendants of the creatures. From her childhood stories, she felt a shiver run through her scales. She was not sure if it was fear or anticipation. The diplomatic fleet arrived 5 days later, 12 warships, each one capable of destroying a small moon. They arranged themselves in a formation around the station, their weapons powered down but ready to activate at a moment's notice. Valkyra had spent those 5 days studying everything she could find about humans. The old texts were full of contradictions. Some described humans as monsters who killed for pleasure. Others described them as artists and philosophers who created beautiful things, or some said they were weak and easily broken. Others said they were the most dangerous species in the history of the galaxy. The only thing all the sources agreed on was that humans were unpredictable. They did not think like other species. They made decisions based on emotions rather than logic. They formed attachments that seemed irrational. They would fight to the death for things that had no value. Ambassador, said Talk, interrupting her thoughts. "We are receiving a response to our greeting signals." Valkyra looked up sharply. "What kind of response?" "It is a simple acknowledgement. They received our message. They understand our language protocols." He paused, looking at his screen with wide eyes. Ambassador, the response is coming from behind the fourth planet in this system. Behind the planet, there is nothing. There, our sensors showed no ships or stations. I know, Ambassador, but the signal is definitely coming from that location. Valera felt her heart's beat faster. They had been watched the entire time. They had been studying the station. Someone had been studying them. Tell Admiral Torvax all ships should maintain position but increase sensor range. I want to know what we are dealing with. The next few hours were tense. The fleet waited in silence, weapons ready, sensors scanning the darkness. Then slowly something emerged from behind the fourth planet. It was a ship, a single ship, small compared to the Sithrani cruisers, barely larger than a transport vessel. Its hull was covered in strange marking that Valera could not identify. Its shape was angular and functional, without any of the decorative elements that Sithrani ships always included. The bridge crew looked at the ship with visible relief. Some of them even laughed quietly. This was the threat they had been worried about, this tiny vessel that looked like it belonged in a museum, but did not laugh. She remembered a passage from one of the ancient texts. Never judge a human by appearance. They hide their strength until the moment they need it. Scan the ship, she ordered. I want to know everything about it. The results came back quickly. The ship had primitive shielding, much weaker than anything the Sithrani used. Its propulsion system was outdated, possibly centuries behind current technology. Its hull was made of simple metals that could be penetrated by standard weapons. By every measure, this ship was no threat at all, but something bothered Valera. The ship was too primitive. If humans had survived for thousands of cycles, they should have advanced. They should have developed new technology. Why would they fly around in a ship that looked like an antique? Before she could think about it further, a message came through the communication system. Voice spoken clear, perfect Sithrani language. Unknown vessel. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force Ship Resilience. Identify yourselves and state your purpose in this system. Earth, the legendary home world of humanity. Valera felt a wave of emotion that she could not name. It was really true. Humans existed. They had survived. Commander Chen, she said, keeping her voice calm and steady. I am Ambassador Valkyra of the Sithrani Collective. We come in peace, and we detected a signal from the structure in this system and came to investigate. We had no idea that humans still existed. We thought your kind had been lost to history long ago. There was a pause. Then the voice came back, and Valky thought she heard a hint of amusement in it. Lost to history? No, Ambassador, we have been here all along. We simply chose not to be found. I understand. We mean you no harm, Commander. We are simply curious. We would like to learn about your people and perhaps establish friendly relations between our civilizations. Another paused longer. This time, Valera waited, feeling the tension on her bridge like a physical weight. Very well, Ambassador. I will need to consult with my superiors. Please maintain your current position and do not approach the station or any other structure in this system. We will contact you again within one standard cycle. The communication ended. Valkyra let out a breath. She did not know she had been holding. What do we do now? Ambassador asked Toki. We wait, she said, and we hope that the legends about human violence were exaggerated. She looked at the small ship floating, alone in the darkness, surrounded by 12 massive Sithrani warships. It looked so fragile, so vulnerable, but Valera could not shake the feeling that appearances were deceiving, that somewhere behind that simple hull, something powerful was waiting. She thought about the old teacher again. Power without wisdom leads to extinction. But what if the humans had gained wisdom? What if they had learned from their violent past and become something new, something better? Or what if they had become something worse? But she did not know the answer. But she had a feeling she was about to find out. The waiting began. The fleet held its position. The small human ship watched them from a distance, and in the darkness of space, ancient secrets began to stir. Valkyra stood at her window and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, in the vast emptiness between worlds, the future of two civilizations was about to be decided. She had spent her entire life studying myths and legends. Now she was living one. She only hoped it would not end the way the old stories did, with fire and destruction and the death of everything she knew. But deep in her heart, in a place she did not want to acknowledge, she felt a cold touch of certainty. Something terrible was coming. She did not know what it was or when it would arrive, but she knew it was coming, and when it came, nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days passed in silence. The Sithrani fleet waited in formation, their sensors constantly scanning the system for any sign of activity. The small human ship remained where it was, floating alone. The darkness, like a patient predator watching its prey. Valera barely slept. During those 3 days, she spent her time reading and rereading the ancient text, searching for any information that might help her understand what they were dealing with. The legends painted a picture of a species that was both wonderful and terrible. Humans could create art that made other species weep with joy. They could also create weapons that turned entire planets into ash. They loved deeply and hated fiercely. They were capable of incredible kindness and unspeakable cruelty. But the thing that bothered her most was how little they actually knew. The ancient texts were thousands of cycles old. They described humans as they existed in a distant past. What were they now? How had they changed? What did they want? On the 4th day, a message came through the communication system. Commander Chen's voice was calm and professional. Ambassador Valkyra, this is the Resilience. My superiors have agreed to a formal meeting. We propose a neutral location, a platform constructed at the midpoint between your fleet and our vessel. Both sides will send small delegations. No weapons will be permitted. Does this arrangement satisfy the Sithrani collective? Valkyra felt a surge of relief. The humans were willing to talk. That was a good sign. Commander Chen, the arrangement is acceptable, and we will begin construction of our half of the platform immediately. How many delegates should we send? 3 from each side. I will lead the human delegation personally. Understood. I will lead the Sithrani delegation. I look forward to meeting you, Commander. As do I, Ambassador Chen. Out. Construction of the platform took 2 days. Both sides worked carefully, building their sections according to specifications that had been shared in advance. When it was finished, the platform was a simple structure, just a large room with 2 doors on opposite sides and a table in the middle. There were no decorations, no symbols, nothing that could be seen as threatening or offensive. selected her two companions carefully. She chose Toki, her second officer, because he was young and curious and had shown no fear of the humans. And GT snorts. And GT. She also chose high scholar Mirth, an old female who specialized in xenobiology and could analyze the humans. From a scientific perspective, Admiral Torvex contacted her before the meeting, his face appearing on her private screen. Ambassador, are you certain about this? I could send soldiers with you. The platform could be a trap. I do not believe it is a trap, Admiral. The humans had plenty of opportunity to attack us if they wanted to. They chose to talk instead. I think they are genuinely curious about us, or they are buying time while they gather reinforcements. That is possible, but we will never learn the truth if we refuse to take risks. This is why I became a diplomat, Admiral, to bridge gaps between species, to find common ground where none seems to exist. Torvex sighed. Very well, but I will have weapons locked on that platform. If anything goes wrong, I will not hesitate to act. I understand, Admiral, but please give me time. First contact situations are delicate. One wrong move could turn a potential ally into a permanent enemy. I will give you time, Ambassador, but not too much time. The Council is watching this situation closely. They are nervous. Humans were supposed to be extinct. Their continued existence raises questions that many in the collective do not want to answer. The connection ended. Valkyra took a deep breath and prepared herself for the most important meeting of her life. The shuttle ride to the platform was short but tense. Tok sat beside her, his scales pale with nervousness. Marth sat behind them, already making notes on her data pad about what she hoped to learn from the humans. What do you think they will be like? Asked Tok. The legends describe them as monsters, but they have been so polite. The legends are old, said Valkyra. People change, species change. Perhaps humans have evolved beyond their violent past, or perhaps they are simply good at hiding it. Valkyra could not argue with that. She had thought the same thing many times. Over the past few days, the shuttle docked with the platform. The airlock cycled and the door opened onto a simple corridor. At the end of the corridor was the meeting room. Valkyra could see the table through the transparent walls. The other side of the room was still empty. The humans had not arrived yet. She led her delegation into the room and took a seat at the table. The chairs had been designed to accommodate both species with adjustable heights and shapes. She settled into hers and waited. A few minutes later, the door on the opposite side of the room opened. 3 figures walked in. Valkyra had studied images of humans in the ancient texts, but seeing them in person was different. They were smaller than she expected, barely 2-3 the height of an average Sithrani. Their skin was smooth and soft with no scales or protective covering of any kind. Their eyes were small and forward-facing like predators. Their hands had 5 fingers, each long and flexible with no claws. The leader was a female, according to the information they had shared. Commander Sarah Chen. She had dark hair cut short and eyes that were almost black. Her face was calm and controlled, revealing nothing. She wore a simple uniform in dark colors with no decorations or symbols of rank that Valkyra could recognize. The 2 figures behind her were different. One was a tall male with pale skin and light hair. The other was a shorter female with brown skin and eyes that seemed to be constantly moving, analyzing everything she saw. "Ambassador," said Commander Chen, her voice the same. Calm tone as before. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Thank you for proposing it, Commander. I know that trust does not come easily in situations like this." Chen smiled slightly. It was a strange expression, the corners of her mouth turning upward while her eyes remained serious. "No, it does not, but trust has to start somewhere." She sat down across from Valera. Her companions took their seats beside her. "Before we begin," said Chen, "I want to address something you said earlier, that you thought humans were extinct. I am curious about this." "Wait, what exactly do your records say about us?" Valera considered how to answer. She decided that honesty was the best approach. "Our records say that humans were a powerful species that rose to dominance in a distant region of the galaxy. They were known for their adaptability and their emotional nature. They spread across many star systems and built a great civilization, but according to our legends, they were also known for violence. They fought constantly with each other and with any species they encountered. Eventually, their violence destroyed them. They fought a great war among themselves and wiped out their entire civilization. That is what we believed until we found your station." Chen listened without expression. When Valera finished, she nodded slowly. "That is partially accurate. We did fight a great war. Many of us died. Our home world Earth was badly damaged. For a time, it seemed like the legends were correct. We were going to destroy ourselves." She paused and something changed in her eyes, a shadow of old pain. "But we did not destroy ourselves. We survived. We learned from our mistakes. We rebuilt and we made a choice. We decided that we would not let our violent past define our future. We would become something better." "That is remarkable," said Valkyra. "How did you accomplish such a change?" "It was not easy. It took generations. Many people did not want to change. They believed that violence was part of human nature, that we could not escape it. But others believed differently. They believed that nature could be overcome with effort and wisdom. Eventually, the believers won. And now what are humans like now?" Chen smiled again. "Hun, this time the expression reached our eyes. We are still human. We still feel strong emotions. We still form deep bonds with each other and with other species. We still have the capacity for violence. But we have also learned to control ourselves. We have learned that strength does not mean cruelty. That power does not require destruction." Murith leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her nervousness. "Commander, may I ask a question? How is it possible that your species remained hidden for so long? The Sithrani Collective has explored most of this galaxy. How did we never find any sign of you?" "Because we did not want to be found," said Chen. "Simply, we learned long ago that being discovered by more powerful species rarely ends well for the discovered. So we hid, yet we developed technology that made our ships and stations invisible to most forms of detection. We snorts watched the galaxy from the shadows and waited for what? For the right time, for the right circumstances, for a sign that we could reveal ourselves without being immediately attacked or conquered. And you think this is the right time?" Chen looked at Valera, her dark eyes unreadable. "I do not know yet. That is what this meeting is about. 2. Determine if the Sithrani collective is ready to know that humans exist to see if we can trust each other. The conversation continued for hours. They discussed history and culture, science, and philosophy. Valera learned that humans had not been idle during their centuries of hiding. They had explored distant regions of space, discovered new forms of life, modes developed technologies that seemed almost magical. They had built alliances with dozens of species that the Sironi had never encountered, civilizations that existed beyond the reach of collective sensors. But they had also watched the Sironi closely. They knew about the collective's conquests, its wars of expansion, its subjugation of weaker species. They knew about the brutal efficiency of Sironi justice and the rigid hierarchy that governed all aspects of society. We have been cautious about you, Chen admitted. Your civilization is powerful, but it is also aggressive. You conquer rather than cooperate. You demand submission rather than offering partnership. These are not traits that encourage trust. Valkyra felt a flash of defensiveness, but she forced herself to remain calm. Eerie, the collective has done what it believed necessary for survival. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Weakness invites destruction perhaps, but strength does not require cruelty. Power does not demand oppression. There are other ways to survive. What ways? Cooperation, mutual support, building alliances based on shared benefit rather than fear. Chen leaned back in her chair. Humans learned this lesson the hard way. We nearly destroyed ourselves because we believe that only the strong survive, but we discovered that the truly strong are those who lift others up, not those who push them down. Valkyra thought about this. It was a strange philosophy, so different from everything she had been taught. But there was something appealing about it, something that resonated in a part of her heart that she had ignored for too long. And I would like to learn more about your ways, Commander. I think the collective could benefit from understanding human philosophy. Chen nodded. And I would like to learn more about the Sithrani. Despite your reputation, you are clearly capable of diplomacy and reason. Perhaps we are more alike than either of us realize. The meeting ended on a positive note. Both sides agreed to continue discussions the following day. They would share more information about their civilizations and explore the possibility of formal diplomatic relations. As Valera returned to her ship, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Perhaps the ancient legends were wrong. Perhaps humans were not monsters. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new era, an era of cooperation and peace. But as she entered her quarters and looked out at the stars, she saw something that made her blood freeze. Admiral Torvax's flagship was moving. Other ships in the fleet were moving too, repositioning themselves around the human vessel. Their weapons were powering up. She grabbed her communicator. Admiral Torvax, what is happening? We had an agreement. The Admiral's voice came back, cold and hard. There has been a development. Ambassador, High Inquisitor Drathel has presented evidence to the Council that humans are an existential threat. The Council has authorized preemptive action. What? No, the humans have shown nothing but peaceful intentions. The decision has been made. Ambassador, return to your ship immediately. The attack begins in 1 hour. The communicator went dead. Valkyra stared at it in horror. Her Hearts pounding, everything had changed. Everything she had worked for, everything she had hoped for was about to be destroyed, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Valera ran through the corridors of her ship, her scales scraping against the walls as she turned corners at dangerous speed. Her mind was racing faster than her feet. She had to stop this. She had to warn the humans. She had to do something, but what could she do? She was an ambassador, not a warrior. She had no army, no weapons, no power to override the decisions of the council. High Inquisitor Drathel had been working against her from the beginning, and she had been too blind to see it. She reached the bridge and found Toki at his station, his face pale with confusion. Ambassador, what is happening? The fleet is moving into attack formation. I know. Toki, the council has ordered an attack on the humans, yet we have less than an hour. But why? The meeting went well. Commander Chen seemed reasonable. Valkyra shook her head. This is not about reason. This is about fear. Drathel has convinced the council that humans are a threat that must be eliminated before they can become stronger. Can we stop it? I do not know. But we have to try. She moved to the communication station and opened a channel to Admiral Torvek's flagship. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen, his expression hard and closed. Ambassador, I told you to return to your ship. You need to be away from the combat zone when the attack begins. Admiral, please listen to me. This is a mistake. The humans have done nothing to threaten us. They want peace. Council does not agree. Inquisitor Drathel has shown them evidence that humans have been watching us for centuries, gathering intelligence, preparing for an invasion. He says they are waiting for the right moment to strike. That is not true. Commander Chen explained their reasons for hiding. They were afraid of being attacked, not planning an attack themselves. And you believe her. You believe a species that has been lying about its existence for thousands of cycles. Valkyra felt frustration building in her chest. Admiral, I spoke with her for hours. I looked into her eyes. She was not lying. Humans have changed. They are not the monsters from the old legends. You cannot know that for certain, and the council is not willing to take the risk. The decision has been made, Ambassador. The attack will proceed. At least let me warn them. Let me give them a chance to surrender peacefully. No, Drathel has specifically ordered that there be no warning. He wants to catch them off guard, to destroy them before they can react. That is not warfare, Admiral. That is murder. Torvek's expression flickered, and for a moment Valkyra thought she saw doubt in his eyes, but then his face hardened again. I have my orders, Ambassador, and so do you. Return to your quarters and stay there until this is over. The screen went dark. Valera stared at it for a long moment, her heart's heavy with despair. What do we do now? Asked Torret quietly. I do not know, she admitted. But I cannot just stand by and watch this happen. She turned to look at the main view screen. The human ship, the Resilience, was still floating alone in the darkness. It looked so small and fragile compared to the massive Sithrani warship surrounding it. The crew of that ship had no idea what was about to happen. Commander Chen was probably in her quarters right now, planning for tomorrow's meeting, thinking about the future, a future that would never come. Kira made a decision. It might cost her everything. Her career, her freedom, maybe her life, but she could not live with herself if she did nothing. Talk Can you open a secure channel to the human ship, one that the fleet cannot detect? Tak looked at her with wide eyes. Ambassador, that would be treason. I know, can you do it? He hesitated for a long moment, then he nodded slowly and turned to his console. It will take a few minutes. Their communication systems are different from ours, but I think I can create a signal that looks like background radiation to our sensors. Do it quickly. While Toki worked, Velira watched the fleet continue its preparations. Ships were moving into position, forming a tight formation around the human vessel. Weapons systems were charging, targeting computers were calculating firing solutions. In less than an hour, 12 warships would unleash their full power on a single small craft. It would be over in seconds. Humans would not even have time to understand what was happening before they were vaporized. Ambassador said, Tak, I have the channel open. Valkyra took a deep breath and stepped up to the communication console. Commander Chen, this is Ambassador Valkyra. Please respond. There was a moment of silence. Then Chen's voice came through, sounding surprised. Oh, Ambassador, this is an unusual frequency. Is something wrong? Yes, Commander, something is very wrong. I do not have time to explain everything, but you need to know that the Sithrani fleet is preparing to attack you. You have less than 1 hour. Another silence, longer this time. When Chen spoke again, her voice was calm but serious. Thank you for the warning. Ambassador, may I ask why you are telling me this? Because it is wrong. You came here in peace. You offered friendship, and my people are about to repay that with violence. I cannot stop them, but I can give you a chance to escape. I appreciate your honesty, Ambassador, but I'm afraid escape is not possible. Your fleet is between us and any escape route, and our ship is not what it appears to be. Velira frowned. What do you mean? I mean that appearances can be deceiving. We knew this meeting might be a trap. We came prepared. Before could respond, alarms started blaring throughout her ship. Red lights flashed on every console. Tora shouted something, but she could not hear him over the noise. On the view screen she saw chaos. The neutral platform where they had held their meeting was exploding. Fire and debris were spreading outward in all directions. The human ship was caught in the blast, its hull torn open by the explosion. What happened? She screamed. The platform said, Tak, his voice shaking. Someone detonated an explosive device on the platform. The human delegates, they were still on board. Valkyra felt her heart stop. Commander Chen, the other humans, they had been on the platform when it exploded, and they were dead, but she had just been speaking to Chen. The communication was still open. Commander Chen, Commander Chen, are you there? The voice that came back was different, cold, hard, full of a rage that made Valkyra's scales stand on end. Ambassador Valkyra, this is Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb of the Resilience. Commander Chen was on that platform when it exploded. She is injured. 3 of our people are dead. I did not know. I swear to you I did not. No, I believe you, Ambassador. Your warning came at considerable personal risk, but you need to understand something. What just happened was not an accident. Someone in your fleet deliberately sabotaged that platform. Someone murdered our people during a peaceful diplomatic meeting. Valkyra felt sick. Drathel, this was his doing. Yet he had never intended to let the meeting succeed. He had planted agents In the fleet, agents who had planted bombs on the platform, the whole thing had been a trap from the beginning, not to trap the humans but to provoke them. Lieutenant Commander, please listen to me. This was not authorized by our government. A faction within our military has been working to sabotage these negotiations. They want war, then they are about to get one. Communication ended. Valkyra stared at the screen in horror. On the view screen, the human ship was changing. The damaged hull was falling away, revealing something beneath it, something sleek and dangerous and completely unlike the primitive vessel they had seen before. It was as if the ship had shed its skin, revealing its true form underneath. Admiral Torvax's voice came over the fleet communication channel. All ships. The humans have opened fire. Return fire immediately. Destroy them. But that was not true. Kira had been watching. The human ship had not fired. It was the Sithrani fleet that had fired first, unleashing a barrage of weapons at the transformed vessel. She expected the human ship to be destroyed in seconds. 12 warships against one small craft. Mathematics were simple, but the human ship was not destroyed. It moved. Valkyra had never seen anything move like that. The ship seemed to dance between the weapons fire, twisting and turning in ways that should have been impossible. Missiles that should have hit it past through empty space. Energy beams that should have burned through its hull struck nothing but darkness, and then the human ship fired back. A single beam of white light shot out from its hull. It struck the closest Sithrani cruiser and punched straight through its shields. The ship did not explode. It simply fell apart, cut in half by a weapon that seemed to ignore all of their defensive technology. The bridge crew stared in stunned silence. One shot had destroyed a ship that could have conquered a planet. The human ship fired again and again. Each shot was precise, surgical. It did not waste energy. It did not miss. Within minutes, 3 Sithrani cruisers were disabled or destroyed. Impossible, whispered Tak. That ship is supposed to be primitive. Our scans showed outdated technology. The scans were wrong, said Valkyra. Quietly, the humans wanted us to see outdated technology. Commander Chen told me that appearances can be deceiving. I did not understand what she meant. Now I do. The human ship was not a relic. It was a trap. A carefully designed piece of bait meant to lure the Sithrani into a false sense of security. The primitive hull had been a disguise, hiding technology that was centuries ahead of anything the collective possessed, and now that disguise was gone. Now the humans were showing their true strength. But even as she watched the battle unfold, I realized something else. The human ship was not trying to destroy the fleet. Its shots were precise and controlled. It was targeting weapon systems and engines, not reactors and crew quarters. It was disabling ships, not killing them. They were holding back even after being attacked, even after their people were murdered. Much they were still showing restraint. Valkyra felt a strange emotion rising in her chest. Respect. These were not the mindless monsters from the old legends. These were disciplined warriors who understood the difference between necessary clears throat, force, and needless slaughter. But then something changed. New contacts appeared on the sensors, dozens of them, then hundreds. Ships were emerging from everywhere, appearing out of nowhere through strain. Ripples in space that the computers could not identify. Human ships. They filled the viewscreen surrounding the Cyronic fleet in a sphere of gleaming metal. Each one was different from the others, but they all shared the same sleek, dangerous design. They all radiated the same quiet power. The fleet was surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned. A new voice came over all communication channels. Ariel was a woman's voice, strong and clear despite obvious pain. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Your fleet is surrounded. Your weapons are useless against us. You have 60 seconds to power down all weapons and surrender unconditionally. This is not a negotiation." Valkyra looked at the viewscreen and felt the weight of history pressing down on her. The old legends had described humans as dangerous beyond measure. They had been right, but they had been wrong about the nature of that danger. Humans were not dangerous because they were violent. They were dangerous because they knew how to wait, how to prepare, how to hide their strength until the moment it was needed. And now that moment had come. The Scythe Collective had awakened a sleeping giant, and nothing would ever be the same again. And Admiral Torvak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unstoppable Will, and watched his fleet die around him, not destroyed, not entirely. The human weapons were strangely precise, cutting through shields and armor to disable engines and weapon systems while leaving life support and reactors intact. But that almost made it worse. His ships were being taken apart piece by piece, turned from proud warships into floating hulks of metal, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Admiral said, his tactical officer, his voice trembling, "We have lost weapons capability on 7 ships. 3 more have lost engines. Humans are not responding to our fire." "I can see that," Torvax growled. He had been a warrior his entire life. He had fought in dozens of battles, commanded fleets that had conquered entire systems. He had never known defeat. He had never even imagined it. But now, surrounded by hundreds of human ships, watching his carefully planned attack fall apart in minutes, he was forced to face a truth that shook him to his core. The Sithrani were not the most powerful species in the galaxy. They never had been. They had simply never met anyone stronger until now. Admiral Torvax said. "The communication officer, Ambassador Valkyra, is requesting permission to address you." Torvax wanted to refuse. He wanted to pretend that the ambassador had nothing to do with this disaster. But he knew that was not true. Kira had tried to warn him. She had said the attack was a mistake. He had not listened. "Put her through." Valkyra's face appeared on the screen. Her scales were pale with stress, but her eyes were steady. "Admiral, what you need to surrender. The humans have made their terms clear. If you power down weapons and accept their conditions, they will not destroy the fleet. Surrender." Torvax felt his blood boil. "You expect me to surrender to these primitives?" "They are not primitives, Admiral. They never were. That was a disguise, a test. And we failed. We were winning before their reinforcements arrived. We were winning." "No, Admiral, we were never winning. They let us think we were winning. They showed us what they wanted us to see. Primitive ship, easy prey, no threat at all. And we attacked without thinking, without questioning, just as they knew we would." Torvax opened his mouth to argue, but he could not find the words. Deep down, he knew she was right. The humans had played them perfectly. Every step of this disaster had been calculated, controlled, designed to Reveal the truth about both species. Truth about the Sithranini was not flattering, Admiral said, her voice softer now. I know this is difficult, but think about what happens next. If you refuse to surrender, the humans will destroy the fleet. Thousands of our people will die. And for what? For pride, for honor that was already lost. When Drathel sabotaged the peace talks, Drathel said Tavax and the name came out like a curse. You believe he was behind the explosion? I am certain of it. He has been working against these negotiations from the beginning. He wanted war. He got it, but not the war he expected. Tavax looked at the view screen, at the hundreds of human ships surrounding his fleet. What each one of them was armed with weapons that could cut through Sithrani armor like paper. Each one was crewed by beings who had just watched their comrades murdered. During a peaceful meeting, they had every right to destroy the fleet, every justification, but they were waiting, offering a chance to surrender, showing mercy that the Sithrain would never have shown in their place, that more than anything else, convinced to back of the truth. The legends about human violence had been wrong, or perhaps they had been right once long ago, but humans had changed. They had become something new, something that the Sithrani had never imagined possible. Commander Chen, he said, opening a channel to the human fleet, this is Admiral Torvak of the Sith Collective. I accept your terms. All ships will power down weapons. Immediately, there was a moment of silence, then Chen's voice came back, still cold but with a hint of something else beneath it. Admiral Torvak, your surrender is accepted. Your crews will remain aboard your ships. A boarding party will secure each vessel. Any resistance will be met with force. Do you understand? I understand. Good, Chen. Out. The communication ended. Torvax turned to his crew. You heard the order. Power down all weapons. Notify all ships in the fleet we are done fighting. Crew moved to obey. Their movement slow and heavy with shock. No one spoke. No one questioned. They all knew that this was the only choice. Over the next few hours, human ships approached each Sithrani vessel and sent boarding parties to take control. The humans were efficient and professional. They secured weapons and critical systems. They treated the Sithrani crews with respect, even courtesy. There was no cruelty, no revenge, no unnecessary violence. Kira watched from her ship as the process unfolded. She felt a strange mixture of emotions, relief that the fighting had stopped, grief for the lives that had been lost, shame for what her people had done, and beneath it all, a tiny spark of hope. The humans had shown mercy. That meant there was still a chance for peace, a chance to make things right. But first there had to be justice. When the human boarding party arrived on her ship, Velira met them at the airlock. The leader was a tall male with dark skin and calm eyes. He introduced himself as Captain James Ayan Kuo. Ambassador Valkyra, he said. Commander Chen has requested your presence on her ship. Anashi believes you may be able to help us understand what happened here. I will come willingly, said Valkyra, but I want you to know that I oppose this attack from the beginning. I tried to warn you. I did not know about the bomb on the platform. Akono nodded. We are aware of your warning, Ambassador. Commander Chen has spoken highly of you. She believes you acted with honor. Commander Chen is alive. I thought she was injured in the explosion. She was injured badly, but she survived. She is recovering on the resilience. He paused. She wanted me to tell you something, she said. Tell the ambassador that appearances can be deceiving in more ways than one. Valera thought about that as she followed the human captain to his shuttle. Appearances can be deceiving. Chen had said that during their meeting. She had been talking about the disguised ship, about the hidden technology, but maybe she had been talking about something else too. Maybe she had been talking about the Sithrani, about what they appeared to be and what they could become. The shuttle took to the resilience. The ship was different now. Its true form revealed. It was beautiful in a way that Sithrani ships never were. There were no harsh angles, no aggressive weapons bristling from every surface. The hull curved smoothly, almost organically, as if the ship had been grown rather than built. Inside, the corridors were wide and well lit. There were plants growing in containers. Along the walls, real plants with green leaves and colorful flowers. There were windows that showed the stars outside. There was art on the walls, paintings, and sculptures that depicted scenes did not recognize. It was nothing like a warship. It felt like a home. Captain Akinquo led her to a medical bay where Commander Chen was resting in a bed. Her left arm was wrapped in a regeneration cast, and there were bandages across her forehead, but her eyes were alert and clear. Ambassador Valera, she said, thank you for coming. I am glad you survived, Commander. When I saw the explosion, I thought, I know I was lucky my companions were not. A shadow passed over her face. 3 of my people died on that platform. Good people. Friends, I am sorry, truly sorry. This should never have happened. No, it should not. Chen looked at her steadily. But it was not your fault. We know who was responsible. Drathel, yes, High Inquisitor Drathel. He planted agents. Your fleet, one of them placed the bomb on the platform. We have evidence, including communications we intercepted, and confession from a captured agent. What will happen now? That depends on you, Ambassador, on your people. We have no interest in conquering the Sithrani collective or destroying your civilization. We have spent centuries avoiding exactly that kind of conflict. But we cannot let this attack go unanswered. Justice must be served. What kind of justice? Chen pushed herself up in the bed, wincing slightly at the pain. The individuals responsible for this attack must be held accountable. Drathel and his conspirators must face trial, not before a human court, but before a coalition of species that have been watching the Sithrani for a long time. Species that your people conquered, enslaved, swore oppressed. Over the centuries, they deserve a voice. In this process, Valkyra felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard rumors about other species, civilizations that had been crushed by Sithrani expansion. Long ago, she had always assumed they were extinct or scattered beyond recovery. These species, they still exist. Yes, many of them. We found them during our centuries of exploration. We helped them rebuild. We formed alliances with them. They are our friends and partners now, and they have been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Valkyra understood now. This was not just about the attack on the platform. This was about history, about debts that the Sithrani collective had accumulated over thousands of cycles of conquest and domination. The humans had not been hiding all these years. They had been building alliances, building strength, building a coalition that could finally hold the Sithrani accountable for their Crimes. What do you want from me, Commander? Chen smiled slightly. I want you to be a bridge ambassador between our peoples, between our pasts and our futures. I believe you are a good person. I believe you want peace. I believe you are willing to change. I do want peace, but I am only one person. I cannot speak for the entire collective. No, but you can start a conversation. You can show your people that there is another way, a better way. She leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. The old legends about humans were not entirely wrong. Ambassador, we were violent once. We nearly destroyed ourselves, but we learned, we grew, we became something better. The Sithrani can do the same. Why? But it will not happen overnight. It will take time, effort, and courage. And if my people refuse to change, then we will defend ourselves, and we will defend our allies. But that is not the future I hope for. That is not the future any of us should hope for. Balira thought about everything she had learned over the past few days about humans and their hidden strength, about the Sithrani and their hidden weaknesses, about legends and reality and the space between them. She thought about the ancient texts she had studied her entire life, the stories of human violence and destruction. They had been warnings meant to keep the Sithrani safe from a dangerous enemy, but maybe they had been the wrong kind of warning. Maybe the real lesson was not about human violence at all. Maybe it was about the danger of believing you are better than everyone else, of thinking that your way is the only way, of refusing to learn and grow and change. The Sithrani had believed they were the masters of the galaxy. They had believed that strength meant dominance, that power meant conquest. The humans had shown them a different kind of strength, a strength built on wisdom, patience, and the willingness to become something better than what you were before. I will help you, Commander said. I do not know if I can convince my people, but I will try. Chen reached out with her good hand and took's hand in her own. Her grip was warm and firm, surprisingly strong for such a small creature. That is all any of us can do. Ambassador, try and hope that our trying is enough. Outside the window, the stars shone steadily in the darkness. They had watched countless civilizations rise and fall over billions of years. They did not care about the struggles of the creatures that lived between them, but maybe thought this time would be different. Maybe this time two species that should have been enemies could become something else, something better. It would not be easy. It would take time and effort and sacrifice. There would be setbacks and failures and disappointments, but it was possible. For the first time in her life, Valkyra truly believed it was possible, and that belief, small as it was enough to start. 6 months passed. In that time, the galaxy changed more than it had in the previous 1,000 cycles. The news of the failed attack spread quickly through the Sithrani collective. At first, Horn the Council tried to control the story, claiming that the fleet had been ambushed by a superior enemy that they had fought bravely against overwhelming odds. But the truth was too big to hide, too many witnesses, too much evidence. The Sithrani people learned that humans were not myths. They learned that their mighty fleet had been defeated in minutes by a single disguise vessel. They learned that they had been surrounded by hundreds of human ships that appeared from nowhere, and they learned that despite everything, despite the unprovoked attack, despite the murder of human delegates, the humans had shown mercy. That last part was the Most difficult for many Sithrani, too. Except their culture was built on strength, on dominance, on the idea that the powerful had the right to crush the weak. Mercy was for the soft. Mercy was weakness, but the humans had proven that mercy could be its own kind of strength. They had won the battle without destroying the fleet. They had taken prisoners without torture or execution. They had demanded justice without seeking revenge. It was confusing. It was frustrating. It forced the Sironi to question everything they thought they knew. High Inquisitor Drathel was arrested 3 weeks after the battle. His own agents turned against him when they realized that the humans had recordings of every secret communication, every conspiracy meeting, every order he had given. There was no escape, no way to deny his crimes. The trial was held on a space station near the edge of Sithrani space. Representatives from 27 different species attended, species that the collective had conquered or oppressed over the centuries. Some of them look like the Sithrani. Others look completely alien, with bodies shaped by evolution on worlds with different gravity, different atmospheres, different needs. Valkyra attended as well, serving as a witness and observer. She watched Drathel stand before the tribunal, his scales dull with the stress of imprisonment, his eyes still burning with defiance. I did what was necessary, he said when asked to speak. In his own defense, humans are a threat to everything the collective has built. They have power beyond anything we can match. If we had not struck first, they would have struck us. The evidence does not support that claim, said the chief judge, a Vorthani female with 6 arms and eyes that seemed to see everything. At once, the humans approached your people in peace. They offered friendship. You responded with murder. They were deceiving us. Their ship was disguised to appear weak. They were planning to betray us. They disguised their ship because they did not trust you, and your actions proved that their distrust was justified. Drathel had no answer to that. He stood in silence, his jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists. The verdict was guilty. The sentence was permanent exile to a prison world where Drathel would spend the rest of his life. It was not death, though. Many of the species present would have preferred execution. The humans had argued against it. They believed that killing Drathel would only create a martyr, a symbol for others who shared his beliefs. Better to let him live in obscurity, forgotten by history. After the trial, Valkyra met with Commander Chen one more time, and the human woman had recovered from her injuries, though she would always carry scars from the explosion on the platform. They met on a balcony overlooking the station's main promenade, where representatives from dozens of species walked and talked and traded. It is strange, said Valkyra, watching the crowd below. For my entire life, I thought the collective was the center of the galaxy, the most important civilization, the most powerful. Now, see how small we really are. Small is not bad, said Chen. We were small once. One planet, one species. No one knew we existed, but we grew. We learned. We made friends and enemies. Yes, some, but fewer than you might think. Most species want the same basic things: peace, security, a chance to live their lives without fear. When you offer those things honestly, most species will accept them. The collective never offered those things. We took what we wanted and demanded submission in return. I know that is why so many species were willing to join our coalition against you, but that can change. It is already changing. Alkira turned to look at her. What do you mean? The Sithni people are asking questions that they never asked before. Why do we conquer? Why do we dominate? Is there a better way? The old answers are not satisfying them anymore. They have seen what we can do. They have seen how we live, and some of them want that for themselves, some, not all. Change takes time, generations sometimes, but it starts with individuals, people who are brave enough to question the old ways. People like you, Ambassador. Valkyra felt a warmth in her chest that surprised her. Praise from enemies was usually worthless, but Chen was not really an enemy anymore. She was something new, something that did not have a name in the Sithrani language. Friend, perhaps, if such a word could apply between species. What happens now? She asked. Now we build. We have a lot of work to do. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, joint exploration, missions. The galaxy is bigger than any of us realized. There are places that neither humans nor Sithrani have ever seen. We should see them together. Together, Valera repeated. The word felt strange in her mouth. The Sithrani did not do things together with other species. They did things to other species, but maybe that could change. Too, she looked out at the stars visible through the transparent walls of the station. They stretched endlessly into the darkness, each one a sun with its own planets, its own possibilities. How many of them had life? How many had civilizations that were still waiting to be discovered? The old Sithrani way would have been to find those civilizations and conquer them, to take their resources and demand their submission, to add their territory to the collective and their people to the labor force. But there was another way, the human way, the way of exploration and friendship and mutual benefit. It seemed weak, it seemed foolish. Everything had been taught said that it could not work, that the universe was too harsh and too competitive for such softness to survive, and yet the humans had survived, more than survived. They had thrived. They had built alliances that spanned multiple galaxies. They had developed technology that made Sithrani weapons look like toys. They had done all of this while hiding in the shadows, waiting, preparing. If that was weakness, then maybe the Sithrani definition of strength needed to change. Commander, said Valkyra, may I ask you something personal? Of course. The legends about humans described your species as violent and destructive. Snorts, they said you nearly destroyed yourselves in a great war. How did you change? How did you become what you are now? Chen was quiet for a moment, her dark eyes distant. We almost did not change, she said finally. For a long time, we repeated the same mistakes over and over. We fought wars, we built weapons, we told ourselves that violence was necessary, that it was just how the universe worked. Many of us believed that humans were destined to destroy ourselves. What changed? We got tired. Tired of war, tired of death, tired of watching our children grow up in fear. Few people started to imagine a different way. They were called dreamers, idealists, fools, but they kept talking, they kept writing, they kept sharing their vision of what humanity could become, and people listened slowly over generations. The dreamers became teachers, the teachers became leaders, the leaders became examples. We built new institutions, new traditions, new ways of thinking about ourselves and our place in the universe. She turned to face directly It was not easy. It is still not easy. We still have people who believe in the old ways, who think that violence is the answer to everything. Maybe they are fewer now than they used to be, and they are getting fewer every generation. How long did it take? Centuries, many centuries. But time passes whether we use it well or not. The question is not how long it takes to change. The question is whether we are willing to start. Belira thought about that. Centuries. The Snort's idea was overwhelming. She would not live to see the end of such a transformation. Neither would her children or her children's children. But maybe that was not the point. Maybe the point was to start to plant seeds that would grow long after she was gone, to be part of something larger than herself. It was a strange idea for a Sith. Her people valued personal achievement, individual glory, the accumulation of power and status within a single lifetime. So the idea of working for a future that you would never see was foreign to everything she had been taught, but it was also beautiful in a way that she had never expected. I think I understand, she said softly. The legends got it wrong. They said humans were dangerous because of your violence, but that was never the real danger. No, the real danger is your patience, your ability to think in centuries instead of cycles, your willingness to sacrifice for futures you will never see. She looked at Chen with new eyes. That is what makes you truly terrifying, not your weapons, not your ships, your vision. Chen smiled. It was a real smile this time, warm and genuine. Is that a compliment or a warning? Both, I think. They stood together in silence for a while, watching the stars. To two species that had been separated by thousands of cycles of history, brought together by chance and conflict and the stubborn hope that things could be different. Did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if the Sithrani would change or if they would cling to their old ways until they destroyed themselves. She did not know if she would be remembered as a hero or a traitor, but she knew one thing: she was going to try. She was going to plant seeds. She was going to work for a future she would never see, because that was what the humans had taught her. That was the lesson hidden in all the legends and myths and stories. True strength was not about domination. It was not about conquest. It was not about forcing others to submit. True strength was about building something that would last, something that would grow, something that would still be there long after you were gone. The humans had understood that truth for centuries. The Sithrani were just beginning to learn. It would take time. It would take generations. There would be setbacks and failures and moments of despair, but someday maybe the Sithrani would look back at this moment and see it as the beginning, the first step on a journey that would transform their entire civilization, and they would remember the humans who showed them the way, the mythical creatures who turned out to be real, the enemies who became friends, the teachers who changed everything. Kira smiled and turned away from the stars. Come, Commander, she said. We have work to do. Chen nodded and fell into step beside her. Together they walked into the future, and in the darkness of space, the stars continued to shine, patient and eternal, watching over a galaxy that was finally beginning to wake.